And we are live. Now, due to some traveling, Jules is covering an event as we speak. So we're going to be splitting up some of the podcasting duties this week. Jules still will tackle the full weekly news rundown, and the whole show will be stapled together for the audio version published later on Pocketnow. Definitely check that out on pocketnow.com. With that bit of housekeeping out of the way, I am stoked to have on a great guest this week, a reviewer publishing some great content on her own channel, who recently started working with the Android Central team, Ms. Jacklyn Dallas. And for folks watching live, if you want to join the conversation, head on over to Twitter, use that PN Weekly hashtag. That's where we'll be pulling comments and questions during the show. And if you're watching later, or you're listening later and you want to drop us a line, you can always do that at podcast@pocketnow.com. Now, before we jump into the tech tomfoolery, we do need to thank this week's sponsor, who is Shutterstock. That's not right. Not who is, which is, that is Shutterstock. Content creators know that the visuals they select really matter. Whether you need some great images for a single project or you have a consistent need for high quality files, Shutterstock has a package for you. Each piece of content in their catalog is reviewed by Shutterstock curators, producing an exceptional collection of authentic imagery that's perfect for telling any story. An average of 150,000 new pieces of content are added every day, giving you an ever-growing selection to choose from. Don't miss out on a crucial element of marketing for your business or finishing your multimedia creation. Find the right visuals for your project. Small business owners on a tight budget will be delighted to know that Shutterstock is making it even easier to get started. For listeners of the show, you can get a 20% discount by heading over to shutterstock.com/weekly and signing up. Once again, that's shutterstock.com/weekly for a 20% discount. There's never been a better time to take your creative and marketing material to the next level. So give Shutterstock a look, and we thank them for supporting the Pocketnow Weekly. Definitely head on over there. It's always those great sort of collaborative tools that help us sort of expand. I've been using Shutterstock for a couple of our video projects here too. So from that first person account of what they bring to the table, it's always nice to have a catalog of stuff to kind of help flesh out your video creation. But that's enough rambling. That's enough prefacing, and that's enough housekeeping. I'm stoked this week to have the talented, the amazing Ms. Jacklyn Dallas on the Pocketnow Weekly. Super stoked to have you on. Absolutely, definitely. Talking about some news this week, talking about some tech, and also just some YouTubing. You have a story that I kind of want to share as we're looking at sort of the future of user-generated content and then how people can collaborate. And so just to kick things off, if you wouldn't mind terribly, because you operate your own YouTube channel as it's NBT. The future of user-generated content and then how people can collaborate. Is that the channel that you're currently producing for? Uh-oh.
Can you repeat that one more time? Sorry, just like glitched out.
No worries. I was like, I heard myself start broadcasting on.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
No worries. Again, we'll chalk that one up to the dumpster fire that is Google Hangouts every week, giving us something to kind of help break the ice with our guests. But no, I wanted to start off just as an introduction for people who might not be aware of your work. You operate your own channel. It's MBT88, Nothing But Tech.
Nothing But Tech 88.
So how did you get started in producing technology videos for YouTube, especially doing reviews?
Yeah, so I got started with tutorials when I first started like 2 years ago, mainly because I didn't have like enough money to devote to like buying tech products. And then I started like growing my audience a little bit. And from there, I then transitioned into reviews. So now I'm making reviews on like a weekly or bi-weekly basis on that channel. And that is, I'm sure you're going to mention, also on Android Central's channel. But yeah, it started out about 2 years ago in February.
And so what kind of response did you find initially? I mean, you know, everyone has those questions. They want to start producing their own content, or they want to start interacting with an audience. What was sort of the motivating factor? Was it that there was a need that you saw that was lacking? You were looking for a tutorial, couldn't find it? Or was it just like, hey, this looks like fun, I want to give it a shot, and it kind of built from there?
Yeah, so I was constantly sending like phone tutorials on how to do stuff to my friends and people that weren't as like tech savvy. And I thought like if there was a market for it with like this many people, then there had to be a market also online of people I could help. So it kind of started out of me wanting to help people, but then of course I was watching Pocketnow and Marquez and a bunch of other channels. And I was like, oh, like reviews are also pretty cool. So then I transitioned into reviews also, and I've kind of stayed more in reviews and tutorials now.
So what was the first phone you reviewed on your channel?
First phone I reviewed was the LG G4. It was like the first product for review that I ever got. And it was actually like a great phone. I think that's like one of my more popular videos also, surprisingly.
G4 had a pretty good run. I liked the G4. I mean, Fruity Boot Loops notwithstanding, it was definitely a popular handset. So you're producing your own content. You're starting to build up your own audience. What did it look like when you started having conversations with Android Central? They're a pretty heavy hitting outlet for tech content.
Yeah, so I think it was like 3 months ago or 2 months ago that Daniel, who's like the managing person at Android Central of like hiring new people and an editor there, he followed me on Twitter. So then I kind of DM'd him and was like, I'd be really interested in working for you guys. Here's my content on my own channel. And then being one of opportunity to diversify who they were having on their channel. So we started talking. We worked on my first video for them was on the BlackBerry Key 1. We did like a 1-week challenge. And then from there, people liked it. So we just like started creating weekly videos now. So that's what we've been up to. My last video went up like 2 days ago for them.
Oh, right on. So you made the first move. Android Central was like nervous around girls. Is that what you're saying?
No, I just don't think that they, I don't want to say that. I just don't think that they knew of my channel because I'm kind of a small channel in comparison. I only have like 26,000 people. So
right.
I don't think that they necessarily knew who I was, but he did follow me. And then from there, I DM'd him and we started talking. We did a video call and I think it's going well, hopefully.
If you wouldn't mind terribly, because you
that's really
channel
funny.
as what it's any
do you hear your voice right now? Am I like
I'm hearing me broadcast too.
I don't know what's going on.
Now, don't get me wrong, I love the sound of my own voice, but
can you I don't know what's going on. Is it off now?
Yeah, it's off now.
All right, that is so weird. I'm sorry about that. I don't know if it's on my end.
We'll keep running with some Google Ghosts. It's fun. You know, it's like time travel. We get to hear where we were minutes ago.
I don't know.
No worries at all. So you're doing some work with Android Central. You get to jump in on something like the Key 1. Well, first of all, like, what were your thoughts on the Key 1, if you wouldn't mind kind of summing them up or sharing right now?
So I think for me, as someone that used BlackBerry a lot as one of like the first smartphones that I was using, I think it was very like nostalgic for me. I know that Michael Fisher, who was on last week, I think, he is still using the Key 1 as his daily driver just because of the like nostalgic feeling that you get when using it. There's something about that tactile feel. So I think that it's a great smartphone for people that are still stuck in that era of wanting a physical keyboard. And I did show it to a lot of people that had used Blackberries, and they all were like, oh my gosh, like this is going to be my next phone. So I think for them it's great. I'm using the OnePlus 5 right now, and I just love the OnePlus 5 in a lot of ways more than I like the Key 1. So I used it for a week, but I haven't picked it up since. I think it's a great smartphone, but I'm not like the key demographic for it.
Now, what have been some of your experiences? Because you were saying there aren't as many female tech reviewers that are kind of tackling this beat right now, and I'm sure you've probably had some unique experiences trying to walking into, not trying to, you're here, walking into this ecosystem. What was that like? As your audience started building up, what did you find that you were able to have the same kind of conversation? Was it that because do you feel like people maybe thought you were a novelty? What did that feel like, or what did that resemble as you started building your video views?
I mean, I think that the one thing that is a little bit different than the common channel that's run by a male host is that I actually have like a larger percentage of females on my channel than a lot of other channels run by males do. So like I said, that's something unique. I think I had like a 20% amount of females, which is a lot for like the tech space. Yeah, unfortunately, like that's low, but that's a lot at this time. So I think that helped. And I also think that it's just like refreshing to see a different perspective sometimes. So I think that also helped me like gain my audience, because people wanted like that different perspective. So I think that, I mean, it has been mostly positive. I know there's like a lot of females that are like scared to get into the community because they feel like it's so like male oriented, but I think that it's actually like really welcoming. Everyone that I've talked to in this community has been nice. So yeah, it's been a great experience so far.
I mean, for myself personally, and again, I'm speaking from the perspective of being a dude, so not having quite the same hurdle to get over in terms of commentary. But I really do feel that once we get out of that initial periphery of just sort of toxic YouTube comments, like not just on tech channels, but just like
In
YouTube
general,
comments
yeah.
in general are typically kind of toxic.
Yeah.
Once you kind of cut through that initial phase, I've really found some great experiences in the tech community. As long as someone has done their homework and they bring an honest perspective to the table, that this has been one of the more welcoming audiences that I think I've ever produced content for. So I'm hoping that that's been maybe the similar
Yeah, it definitely
experience.
has. Yeah, for sure. I mean, everyone's like, there are some mean comments, but you have to like learn to look past them. And a lot of them actually help you then better your content, I feel. Like if they give you constructive criticism. So I feel like I could be jinxing myself, but I feel like so far it's been like a really positive experience for me. I bet you agree with Pocketnow especially.
Well, and again, for Pocketnow is, you know, my first month was like, who's this guy? Why is he wearing a hat?
Why is he wearing a hat?
I guess we're gonna be that guy. Awesome. So I just kept wearing hats because I like it. So what do you have coming up next on Android Central? You're reviewing the OnePlus 5. Do you recently spent some time with a Moto? Was that one of the phones that you just recently reviewed?
Yeah, so the OnePlus 5 is actually going on my personal channel. I'm doing like a 3-week later review, but for Android Central, my video like a day ago or 2 days ago was the Moto G5 compared to the Moto E4. And I know that the Moto G5 isn't covered as much because it's not available in the US, but I actually really enjoyed my time with it. It's an awesome budget phone.
So that was kind of surprising to me. We actually didn't get to spend any time with any of the Moto Gs this year.
Oh, wow.
I was
Yeah.
kind of bummed because like I did a lot of content on the G4s last year. So the United States is only getting the G5 Plus. What were some of the differences on the G5 versus the G5 Plus, and why do you think it maybe didn't get that push in the United States?
So I also tried out the G5 Plus, and I think that the G5 Plus is a lot better feeling in the hand. It's a lot thinner, and it's also a little bit bigger. It's a 5.2-inch screen versus a 5-inch screen, so it definitely is a better phone in the feel in the hand, but it's also more expensive. Moto normally releases one phone and then a Plus version of that phone, which is always a little bit better, but a little bit more expensive. So I think that the G5 Plus is still a good enough phone, and it still is a low enough price that Moto probably didn't feel the need to release the G5 also. I bet that they probably just wanted to like have more people buy the more expensive one. But the G5 is like $200 on Amazon right now, and for that price, it's really, really impressive. It has like a 1080p screen, has a fingerprint sensor, it has a decent camera, not ideal. And then the speaker setup is surprisingly really good. It's like even better than like the LG G6, which is like saying a lot considering how expensive the G6 is.
Now, it's been partly my hypothesis that a lot of manufacturers will skip over the United States with some of these more entry level options. Like you were saying, it's more likely that if Motorola puts out a G5 and a G5 Plus, only the Plus will come to the United States now. I wonder, is there maybe like a first world idea that manufacturers might be overlooking? I think that there's an audience for $150 to $200 phone in the United States, a near burner phone.
Yeah, I agree.
Here in the USA, but it seems that manufacturers are reluctant to court that market here.
Yeah, I mean, you see Huawei also is like a really big player overseas, but then here they're not as well known to like the general public. So yeah, it is interesting. A lot of the budget phones don't really get released here right away, or if they do, they're not necessarily made for the US. Like they have a lot of really heavy bloatware that you don't necessarily find in like other US phones. So definitely is interesting, but Motorola did release the E4 here, which is $130 or $70 with Verizon. So that one definitely is a budget phone and a burner phone replacement. But
literally a burner phone replacement. So yeah, when you burn your burner phone, you can replace it with the Moto E.
Yeah, for sure.
So we've got a question here from the PN Weekly hashtag from Gadget Devo, and this one is tagged to you. Curious on your thoughts on the OnePlus 5 versus the negativity of some of the coverage surrounding the OnePlus 5, and you seem to be pretty positive on it. I mean, you're wrong, but explain why.
You're wrong. I mean, I look at this phone, it literally looks like an R11 or an iPhone 7 Plus. So I do mention that in my review. It is kind of disappointing that OnePlus didn't try to innovate with the design. They kind of just took what was already working. So on one hand, I'm disappointed in them, but on the other hand, it actually has kind of worked to OnePlus's benefit because for the general public, they see a phone like this, which looks like an iPhone 7 Plus, has the same camera setup as an iPhone 7 Plus for the most part, and is a lot cheaper. So I think even though they weren't really that creative and they did copy a lot of things from Apple, I do think that for its price point, I actually think it's a better phone than the iPhone 7 Plus, like just if you think of like performance to the price ratio. But I know a lot of people don't actually like it. There were a few issues with it, like the jelly screen effect or the fact that they cheated in the benchmarks, which is a whole nother thing. But yeah, I don't know. There's some things I love about it and then some things I definitely don't. But yeah, I guess you'll find out more in my review. What do you think of it?
Oh, I feel so bad for my audience. I've prattled on so much about the OnePlus 5.
Yeah.
You know what? In not sort of beating a dead horse, I would say my biggest disappointments with OnePlus in this generation are largely in line with what you just criticized. A derivative design, but I had this really great commenter on one of my reviews who was like, I never look at the back of my phone, so why should I care? And you're like, you know what? Fair point.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
If it feels good in the hand and you like it, then I guess that's fine. But I think maybe the biggest missteps were more company focused, less device focused. So the goodwill that this brand has built up with tech enthusiasts, because so few brands are really courting the Android enthusiast. So many companies are trying to pivot to a more mass market audience that I kind of felt this generation sort of not soured the milk, but maybe did a disservice with some of that Android enthusiast audience.
Yeah, I agree.
Like you were saying, benchmark cheating, rigging benchmarks, that it's not a huge deal. No one's really buying phones based on benchmarks anymore, but it's still a data point to say, like, well, why? Why would you do that when this phone is already a screamer? And now it just makes me feel like this company is doing something, again, to try and force a narrative in a really ham-fisted way. And that makes me a little less trusting of this brand.
Yeah, I
very
agree that.
few complaints with the actual device. It really did feel more like this company kind of got away from the media and the messaging that worked so well last year for the OnePlus 3 and the 3T. And that felt like a minor stumble. Like this whole year talking to this audience, it didn't feel like they were firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, I agree. And also just like simple things like when they always like try to portray themselves as a small company when we all know that like they have a lot of money to spend. Like when they were commenting in like the Verge's exclusive video, they said they didn't have the money to spend on like a bezel-less or like a near bezel-less screen. And I see how that could be true, but I feel like they really could have pushed it a little bit more. The bezels are definitely huge. Like if you put this phone next to an S8, it just looks so ancient.
Well, like I don't know. I mean, like we have literally 2 phones that are pushing, or I guess 3 if you count like the Mi Mix, but that's not really a North American release.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
But I just think it's funny, like how quickly. I mean, think about how viscerally fast that change happened from really trying to maximize a 16:9 screen device with a front home button or a front fingerprint sensor to the LG G6 comes out, then the Galaxy S8 comes out. 2 phones come out and they've completely wrecked
they really
our idea of bezels and aesthetics. I mean, fundamental shift where now it's like I don't even want to look at it unless it's like an 85% screen to body ratio.
It is true. And when the iPhone comes out, it's just going to be like even worse because then like every general consumer that would normally buy Apple is now going to like see that.
Yeah, well, and that's why I'm actually excited. I just finished cutting an iPhone 7 after the buzz. Like our revisit.
Oh, cool.
Long-term revisit to phones after we're done doing the main review, and it was just kind of crazy. Like, it's a 16:9 720p display. It's old, and we're all really looking forward to seeing Apple shift up something major. But there's something that I think a lot of people might miss in just the consistency of the iPhone. Like, you could give, if you were to transplant someone from 10 years ago using the original iPhone and you were to give them an iPhone 7, I don't think there would be a huge learning curve for that person to get around
I don't
on
think
that
so
new
either.
iPhone. So this major shakeup in hardware, I bet there will be some people who are like, oh, you know what? I kind of miss the home button. You know,
Yeah.
like, I just kind of miss like this thing that I used to really like about my phone. And, you know, the new screen is super sexy. This new design is awesome. It's finally something ultra fresh from Apple. But as a victim of their own success, I wonder if there will be some people who won't be like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, it's like, it's new and it's fresh and it's different and it's better, but I kind of miss my old iPhone 5. You know?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, especially a lot of things in iOS are centralized around that home button, like the multitasking or Siri, like all of it's kind of centralized around it. So I definitely think it's going to be more of a learning curve than past years. Like 3D Touch, even you didn't need it to use your phone, so a lot of people don't ever use it.
Right.
So I think, yeah, people are like, especially the older generations, like people's grandparents have gotten so used to that home button. I think it's going to be a learning curve for sure.
We have a couple of comments here, just circling back to our conversation about the Moto E from Andrew Wallace, hashtag PN Weekly. Super budget devices are very popular here in the Midwest, so he doesn't understand Moto's strategy. From Peter Hayton, I just wonder how much true budget phones really would sell in places like the US. But apparently we're seeing some traction, especially on unlocked handsets being sold through retailers like Amazon. I'll be really curious to see, you know, especially with these new, like, instead of making their own Fire phone, they release a low-cost phone and then put ads on it to cut the price even more.
Yeah.
And then following up from Peter Hayton, some want and need affordability, but they don't always get this from these mid-rangers. Offer better, but for not much less. And I guess maybe that's one of the things that's I think one of the difficult ideas to overcome. So you're using a OnePlus 5, and you recently were using a Moto G. Now, if you were sort of a regular consumer looking at picking up a phone, how does the money make sense? You have to pay $200 up front for an entry-level phone, but then you can go to any carrier and on a no interest loan with zero down, if you've got decent credit, go and get an $800 phone and just make monthly payments. Do you think Americans are kind of doing the math on that? Or do you think that there's a wedge that we can start better educating people as to where they can save money?
I mean, I think that especially if it's someone's second phone, I think that it doesn't really make sense to have two premium smartphones. Like, I know a lot of people, when I was asking, I did like a Periscope and I asked, like, who do you think this phone is for? And a lot of people were saying that they would get it as like a backup phone. So I think for that, you're not going to want to spend like $40 a month to get like a 7 Plus or an S8 if you can get a backup phone for $200 down. Because even though it's over a bunch of months, eventually you are spending a lot of money. So I think
Right.
for a backup phone, it's actually a really good alternative. But then someone brought up to me, what about just getting a flagship from last year? And that's a good point also, because flagships normally, even if they're like the last year's flagships, like the S8 Edge, are still really great phones, and they're similar prices like used on eBay to the newer budget phones that are coming out. So I think that that's a good point.
Now, but do you think that, because I agree, and actually this is a question we got earlier in the day from Andrew Wallace also, how would a 2015 flagship compare to a 2016 mid-ranger? Curious on the parity of features when comparing them. So, you know, it's been part of the big debate. How would you rank a last year flagship against some of these mid-rangers? Do we think that the $200 to $300 budget section of the smartphone world has caught up enough to a phone from last year? Or do you think that we're even going to get the same kind of software support? Like, they might only get a year of updates where that flagship still might get a year of updates.
I think that, let's just say the S7 Edge, which was a really popular phone, I think in camera performance, it wins out above every budget phone. The main issue that I always find when testing out budget phones is the camera quality is really not there. So I think that in camera performance, but especially with Motorola, I actually prefer their software immensely over Samsung's. It's so much more stock and clean. So I think that in terms of software, you do get a better experience on like the $200 to $300 phones if you're buying it from Motorola. But in terms of hardware, looks, and the camera performance, I think the last year flagships always win out because they're still really good looking in comparison to like a beefy, really thick phone. The S7 Edge is still like, if you compare the two next to each other, I think most people would say the S7 Edge is better looking.
I don't think anyone would disagree with
Yeah,
you there.
I hope not.
I'm still cranky. I'm not the biggest fan of glass back phones, but I think the work that Samsung has been doing in terms of design, like every time from the Galaxy S6 on, every one of their phones, I think has been a marvel of design and engineering. But it makes me want to set it up on a little pedestal with a glass case under museum lighting.
Yeah.
It's very rarely the device that I want to take with me outside. That's why I've been anxious. Like, we've been seeing rumors and we've been hearing, I think we did see something go through the FCC, but we're really late in the summer now for a Galaxy S8 Active, a ruggedized version of the S8. So that used to be like my summer fix, like I'm jonesing for a new phone review over the summer, and it always used to be the Active. I want to shift topics real quick. This is a news story that a bunch of people sent in. Unfortunately, I only have the tweet from Andrew, but I know a number of other people have sent this in, and we did talk about it. I think we did post a news piece on it on Pocketnow. But a luxury phone manufacturer, Vertu, is going out of business. They're liquidating jobs, and even in trying to get communication from PR teams, they've already shut down payments. BBC asked an external spokesman for comment. Well, it's gone into liquidation, and I'm not being paid by them anymore. That's all I have to say.
Very blunt.
Wow, that fell apart fast. Now, you're the female persuasion, so obviously when you talk about phones, all you talk about are how pretty and shiny they are.
Of course.
Vertu was totally a company right up your alley, right? It's just it's all blinged out. Is lit AF. That's how the kids are saying it these days.
For sure. I mean, I actually like the matte black, more subdued phones. I think that those look better over time and they don't attract as much attention. So I actually wasn't a fan of their phone's design, but I know a lot of people were. So I guess it's sad for people that like them. I was going to
say, obviously not a lot of people were. They couldn't keep the luxury market going. I wonder, is this a data point that maybe the idea of a smartphone as any kind of status symbol is maybe a waning idea? Do you think that we've kind of arrived at enough saturation that no one's really impressed? You could walk in with a $2,000 smartphone and people are not going to be impressed by that like they were in the early days of the iPhone.
I mean, I forget. There's a really luxury car company that still produces phones. I forget which one it is. Maybe Lamborghini.
Oh, I know. There's Porsche design.
Yeah. Okay.
They still influence other manufacturers, but it's usually their spin on a phone, usually not their own standalone device.
So I know that a few years ago they made a luxury car company made a phone. And I think it really did not do well sales-wise. It was selling for $2,000 to $3,000, and I think it really plummeted because that's a ton of money. And I remember the specs inside of it were actually last year's specs, the year before it was released. So it was really just a fashion symbol. But Red just came out with a phone, and a lot of people put money down on it just because of who Red is, but they saw one photo of it and one page of specs. So I definitely still think that there's a marketplace for buying phones from companies that have a name for themselves without much knowledge of it. But I don't know, the $1,500 Red phone is definitely going to have to do something pretty amazing to be worth that. And we're not going to see it until Q1 of 2018, which is crazy.
Well, but I think that's actually a really great point to bring up, because I feel like no one is really going to be looking at a phone from Red. And I spent $1,500 because it's got a Horween leather back studded with diamonds. They're spending $1,500 on hopefully what will be one of the best mobile camera experiences that a smartphone has ever seen. And to your point, I mean, obviously, often when we would look at Vertu, I've never held a Vertu phone. I'm actually bummed just because it's so audacious to charge that much money for often, older specs. Like I remember Virtu phones being launched not even a year out of date, but sometimes 2 years out of date. Software just ridiculously outpaced by what was current. No sense of updates, but they were early in using synthetic sapphire for the screen. So it was an expensive front glass that was hard to scratch, but you were on a 3-generational version of Android.
Yeah, I mean, the people that are buying that phone, I don't think are buying it as like Android fanatics, like, oh, I need the most recent software. I think that they're buying it more as like a symbol of kind of who they are, and they like the looks of the phone. So I don't think that necessarily it's for the people that want like the latest Snapdragon chips and the latest software. I don't think that the buyers of that phone, like the niche, actually care that much about that. I could be wrong though.
I don't think you are.
Okay.
but that's what I think is so interesting. Again, we're watching the premium market sort of plateau. This is something that I think Apple is trying to address, right? They've become more of a lifestyle brand than I think a tech enthusiast brand.
Yeah, I agree with that.
People will sport that Apple logo in a way that I think is more lifestyle defining. This speaks to like sort of my personality, and this speaks to the other brands that I like to interact with, like my favorite pair of jeans or my favorite sneakers. I kind of feel like outside of a company like Samsung or outside of a company like Apple, the conversation has walked completely away from a mobile device being any kind of status. You can look at someone walking around with an iPhone 7, and I don't think there's any general perception around that individual that they've got something special, not like a really expensive watch or a multi-$1,000 purse or handbag or something like that.
Especially since you can, sorry, you can go.
No, please go ahead.
Especially since you can get it for like $40 a month now. It's not like you need like a ton of money to buy it, whereas like with the Apple Watch Edition or something, that was definitely like a fashion symbol. Like you're spending 10 grand on a watch that's going to be outdated in a year. You obviously are like buying it for the fashion state. So I think that, I don't really think that you're like, oh my gosh, this person has so much money when like you see them with an iPhone 7 now. Whereas maybe in the past with like the really a lot older iPhones, I think that people would have been like more impressed.
Now, I mean, just to kind of put a pin in Virtu, I think one of the things that is kind of, I guess, surprising was a couple of weeks ago, we were hearing word that Virtu was going to be working with a manufacturer, TCL, the maker of the new BlackBerry Key 1. They also have the Alcatel, the Idol line. And I guess that's what's maybe kind of surprising is just how abrupt the end of this company was.
Yeah, it really is.
They had plans to be working on a next generation of devices with a manufacturer that's bringing a lot of credibility to the table. What do you think this might mean for other companies trying to get into this space? I kind of feel like unless you're an Andy Rubin on the Essential phone, no one seems to be particularly interested in a new player entering the market without some serious backing.
Yeah, I think that, as we already mentioned, like Red, I think if you already have like a past history, either in a different market or in Android as the Essential phone does, I think that there's still like an opportunity for it to come into the market. But I really think that the only opening for someone brand new is going to be in the super budget game. People are always looking for like the new OnePlus One. So I think that there's still opportunity, but I don't think that there's opportunity for someone to come in and be like, here's our $800 phone. I think that you need to bring something unique and you need to bring it at like a low price point in order to actually be heard.
I completely agree. Well, and also I think that's where some of the more exciting work has been lately. You seeing, like the fact that I'm talking about a ZTE, I'm anxious to see what the next Axon is going to bring to the table. Is something 2 years ago I never would have imagined that these players would be as aggressive as they are for these markets. Let me get, I already lost. We had a comment replying to the difference between older flagships versus newer mid-rangers from Random P. After cracking my AT&T S7 Edge, I bought a used Exynos model off of eBay. I love it. Last year's flagships are still great. And then we have a question here. Oh, Ed Modlin had a comment on the Active. Hey guys, except for the fingerprint sensor, the S8 Plus carries it, but don't let the Active be ugly. I think that's kind of the point.
Yeah,
of
the
an
active
active
is like there's
that it's
there's
supposed
no
to be
getting past it. It's,
charmingly
yeah.
ugly. I still think the S6 active is the best that phone has ever looked. I think it got a little just bulbous or a little chunky, a little
Yeah.
chunkier on the S7 active, but I don't know, maybe the skinnier screen might help minimize some
I mean,
of the
it's fake camo though. Like, how good are you gonna make it? Like, there's
it's so
there's
terrible.
really there's nothing else.
That's why I like the S6. I have an S6 active somewhere in my terrible shelf of old devices, and it's that blue fake
Yeah.
digital
Oh,
camo. But the blue is kind of cool. You know, you were saying like you like matte finished phones because they hold up longer over time. Something about blue. I have only, not the company, but the color.
yeah.
I have only been asked out in public about blue phones. It was the Honor 8, the Pixel, and now the Huawei P10. And those are the only phones like where people and not like a person like at a checkout line in a grocery store, but multiple people have asked me. Usually it's what kind of case do you have on your iPhone? That looks really great. But they're drawn to something kind of like shiny and blue. I
Yeah,
never
I
was
love
really
the
asked
blue.
that when phones were yellow or red or green, like all of my old Lumias. But blue seems to catch the eye, and blue seems to catch the imagination.
I think the new Honor phone is like this really shiny blue, and that looks great. Like that gets your attention right away.
No, and I really dig that Honor glass look. Again, I want to put it on a pedestal
Yeah.
a little case with museum lighting, so you can see all of the really fancy light reflecting effects.
Yeah,
but
because the fingerprints just
really
ruin
nice.
it. Like any.
Got to throw that that plastic. I tried to say clear plastic guard, and I failed 3 times. That clear plastic snap-on case or a bumper case, and then it kind of diminishes what I think is aesthetically pleasing about that look.
I mean, and the only other time I've actually been asked out in public is if I have like a debrand skin or a colorware skin. People like notice that because if you apply them right, they actually look pretty good. So if I have like I was rocking like a hot pink carbon fiber, and I was asked a ton about that. But other than that, the only times I've ever been asked is like with the blue Pixel, as you said. You never get asked otherwise.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I wonder what that might speak to in terms of just aesthetic and design. I do have a question here, just to kind of shift gears and talk about some more industry stuff. Put you on the spot because
okay.
I don't know a lot about this stuff either. So if we have to
hope
pass
I do.
From Dennis Kapusa. Kapuza, I've butchered your name and I apologize. His Twitter profile pic is an LG G5. With 5G right around the corner, when can we expect devices with it? Does that mean new 4G phones will suddenly have a shorter lifespan? #PN Weekly. What do you think? I mean, we've been starting to flirt with 5G networks here in the United States. AT&T, Verizon, they're all making noise about their future rollout plans for what future data might look like. But do you think that this is something that people should be worried about now when making a purchasing decision, since we like to hold on to our phones longer than we used to?
I don't think so. I think that if you buy a phone now, you're probably keeping it for 2 years, I think is like what most people do. If you buy like a contract plan.
I think the average is now somewhere closer to like 26 months. I mean, like,
oh wow, okay.
We're starting to really stretch how long we're keeping a phone. And I think a part of that is because we're making monthly payments on it.
Yeah.
You know, when you see your bill cut by $30 a month, you're like, oh, you know, I can kick this for a little while longer.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that's gonna. I think it's definitely gonna change the market. There's definitely still coverage issues with certain carriers. I know that T-Mobile always pushes cheaper prices, but their coverage is really not great in my experience. So I think that there's still a long way to go for 4G coverage to get better before we have to start worrying about 5G coverage and our phones being obsolete from that. I think that people, if they buy a phone now, they'll still be fine in a few years. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think no, I do. I do. It's one of those things. Like, for example, T-Mobile just opened up some new spectrum, and we had some people asking about that, and it was going to be at a lower frequency for better building penetration. But there is sort of a little bit of a chicken and an egg. You know, once you have that network up and running, what phones are compatible? Do you try and future-proof with the purchase? Does that mean waiting another year before you might want to buy a phone? And I'm kind of the mind, like, I think for me, the commentary is like, I really want people to be holding on to these as long as they can. And I don't mean that like you should hold on to a phone that's dying past the time where it's really serviceable or reliable. But, you know, we've got a lot of concerns coming up in technology in general, even just outside of the mobile space. I think battery markets are going to get very cutthroat and very competitive, and pricing is going to fluctuate once more electric vehicles are hitting the roads, once more home batteries. You know, Tesla won't be the only company offering some kind of giant home battery.
Yeah, for sure.
These materials are, you know, are precious materials to be throwing around, and especially for how much of this stuff ends up as e-waste.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a concern in general. So I really hope that we see better longer term support. I think 18 months is becoming inadequate in Android land for software support. If someone's
Yeah.
holding onto a phone for 24 to 28 months, 18 months of software support, bug fixes, security updates is inadequate. And so my horse in this race is, can we find a way to legitimately improve quality of life later into a phone's life cycle to kind of help minimize the impact on some of these issues? So I think it's precious. I think it's important that people are looking at the future of 5G and spectrum and things like that. But I think that'll go hand in hand with the data center and backhaul improvements that will also improve LTE over that transitionary generation. So let's say you bought a phone right before an explosion of 5G stuff was launched, and you're now that schmuck who's stuck on an old crappy device. I think a lot of the stuff that's going to make 5G viable will help improve the 4G situation.
I agree. Yeah.
Make that transition. So I don't know that. Again, I want to preface this. I think people should be aware, especially us techies that have to help family members and friends with purchasing decisions. We should be aware, but I don't think it's going to be critical just yet. I think we're going to be looking into next year before I would start saying, hold off on making a purchase. Let's wait to see what happens, and then we'll go from there. I think this year and into next year, we're pretty safe still on LTE.
And I mean, even the other main issue with phones, like, I can't believe that some people are keeping them for like 28 months because the battery technology, like how long the phone actually lasts, really takes a hit. Especially, I'm using an iPhone 7 Plus as like a co-daily driver to get iOS and Android, and the battery life on it is terrible now. Like, I have trouble making it through a day, and in the beginning I was getting like a day and a half or 2 days. So I think that keeping your phones for a long time, software should be mentioned, but I think we also really need to focus on improving batteries and making them last for how long we're going to keep them now, which is like 2 years or a little bit longer, because right now they just don't last.
Yeah, I think, you know, I would love to see a concerted effort from a manufacturer to really engage in better battery recycling. You know, if you're going to build the battery in because you want to improve things like durability or water resistance, I would love to see a Samsung or an LG make this process really easy for me to do a 2-year refresh, where I send my phone into them. Maybe I get a loaner device or I have a backup phone or something, and they can safely open up the phone, swap out the battery, return the phone to me. I know that that battery is not ending up in a landfill, that they can do whatever they can to recycle what might be recyclable from that battery. And I get a device that has day one brand new device battery again. That used to be my favorite thing to do back in the day when all phones had removable backs, is after a year, I would buy an extra internal battery, and then I would have 2 batteries, and one of them was brand spanking new. So it was like I had a fresh device all over again. And that has been, I think, one of the saddest things about watching these things get sealed up.
Yeah, I think that I think Apple actually makes like a effort to try to recycle stuff, and they're making more of an effort now, but no manufacturer is really putting the time into it. I think that they like to say that they are for like show, but I definitely think that it has to be more of a thing, because if people keep upgrading their smartphones every 2 years or even a little bit longer, there's still tons of smartphones that are just like wasting and hurting the environment. So yeah, I would love to see a manufacturer like actually devote some time to that.
Well, and I wonder if maybe there's not a market for paying for support or something. I mean, just kind of spitballing when we see that there are like Galaxy S4s. Like our president, I think, is still using a Galaxy S3, right? You know, he's not rocking a Vertu. He's using like an old busted Galaxy to do all of his late night tweeting. I would feel better if our commander in chief had up-to-date security software
Yes,
on
I
his
mean,
smartphone. Just, you know, he's not going to get the newest version of the Android operating system, but for bug fixes, for malicious software, for security issues.
Yeah, what is the S3 running? It's got to be it's got to be really old software now.
Yeah, I mean, like, even if did it make the move to Lollipop?
I don't know if it's not on Lollipop. That's sad. He used to get upgraded $40 a month. Come on. Not a big deal for him at all.
Well, you know, like you don't get to stay rich by just throwing money away. You gotta be kind of thrifty on some of that stuff. Don't want to get into politics.
That's, yeah, of course.
A surefire way to fire up chat and conversation that probably won't be fun.
And well, yeah.
Yeah, it probably won't end well. I do want to shift gears here real quick. Let me get this out of the way. Sorry, I've got some other show notes up here. Jules mentioned, I mean, we were talking about some of the background on you doing our dossier, that you had also done some personal work for charity work or for t-shirt design or something like that. And I was hoping you could kind of talk us through that, explain what it was that you were doing, because it sounded pretty cool.
Thank you. So I make t-shirt designs, like tech designs on t-shirts that go along with my channel, but you don't have to be a subscriber to my channel or like my channel to wear them. They're kind of just like cool tech-based designs. So I've done 5 of them now. So for every single design, I'm giving 10% of the profit to a nonprofit organization. So the way I'm trying to involve my viewers in it is I have viewers send me like which ones they want me to do and why. So for the 5th one, and now every 5th generation, like every 5, I'm going to give 100% of the profit to it. So I'm on the 5th generation right now. So we're giving 100% to the St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, which was recommended by one of my viewers. So I decided to do that one. And we had like Jonathan Morrison support it, which was pretty cool. So it actually sold really well also, which is great because now we get to give back. So that's what I've been trying to do. If you want to check them out, you can just look up MBTs online. They are all based around tech, Android phones and stuff like that. And the 5th one is ending in a day or so. So, yeah, I'm trying to give back, I guess. I don't know.
So get them while they're hot, because you only have like a day.
Yeah, and then
now stop watching this podcast.
And then do it. And then the next one is coming out like next week.
Right on. Is it going to be the same structure, the same charity? Or
I think a different charity. I'm waiting on which one I'm going to do. I'm going to do a poll on Twitter and see which one people want to give back to. A lot of people have like personal stories with them, like for a cancer hospital, like pediatric cancer was one. Someone had experienced something with that, so they wanted me to give back to it. So I'll do it like for that. If not, I just go through and pick like which one I'm most passionate about. But yeah, it's been like a really fun thing to be able to create what I personally think cool designs and then also give back at the same time. So yeah, it's been cool.
Right on. I would, let me know when the poll is out, and I'll help give it a tweet, and I'll give it
perfect
to see if we can get some more input. I would humbly maybe ask on the poll for the JDRF.
Okay, JDRF. Here, I'll write that down.
That's sort of our in-house. I mean, so like for all my hardware, I donate like all of our old phones to Cell Phones for Soldiers, because I'm a military brat. But then for all of our financial contributions, we go JDRF. So I'll
write that down.
There, that everyone who's watching this or listening to this podcast should all vote for the JDRF.
I'll vote for the JDRF.
Real quick, Ed Modlin at Tech Files did get. He's one of my best go-tos whenever we're doing one of these live. He looks up stuff way faster than I can when I'm trying to do the show. Lollipop was the last official release for the Galaxy S3. So unless our commander in chief is really up on his custom ROM,
I doubt
Which
that.
I'm sure, Secret Service it would be thrilled, and our security agencies would love to have a president using, a smartphone with custom community built software. Probably not great.
Yeah, Lollipop. Wow, that feels like such a long time ago.
It was. I
Yeah.
mean, this stuff cycles so quickly. And again, we got a number of people talking 24 months seems to be like what should be mandatory, even though that's not really what we get for smartphone support. It's, we have this idea of planned obsolescence and commercialism and how these products are sort of encourage people to buy new stuff. It's more an emotional purchase than it is a rational purchase. But I really do think that even if the industry itself doesn't motivate this change, that consumers are gonna start realizing some of the limitations of how we're currently doing business, or some of the downsides of how we're currently doing business. And I think the industry will sort of change. The consumers will sort of change the industry around some of those
Hopefully. Yeah, 18 months is really not a long time for an $800 phone. They should be supporting. I feel like they should be supporting that for at least like 2.5 to 3 years.
And again, I don't think anyone would expect 3 major number versions of Android as updates.
Yeah.
But when we see how many devices are out in the ecosystem, again, running Lollipop and KitKat and just really, really old gear, especially around the world. This isn't necessarily even like the first world issue, developed issue. Just the notion that those phones are not getting security updates, I think, is a Windows XP zombie problem waiting to happen. When we see the Internet of Things, IoT devices getting hacked to become bot armies, I don't think it's necessarily out of the realm of imagination that could start happening to older phones too.
I mean, I hope it does. I think that Apple is actually one of the best in supporting all their phones, right? Like, I think that they still support the iPhone 5 with later software.
I think the iPhone 5 has still been getting, again, more like patches and bug fixes. I don't think the iPhone 5, I don't know, someone's going to correct me because I'm probably wrong, because I don't spend a lot of time on iPhones. I don't know, did the iPhone 5 get an official iOS 10?
I'm not positive. I know that the 6 did, but I'm not. All right, hopefully someone tweets us. If not, I can look it up online. But yeah, I mean, notoriously though, Apple has always like actually done a good job supporting. I think that OnePlus has done a great job supporting software. I think that I don't think that they support. Do they support the OnePlus 2 still?
So here's the problem. OnePlus, if I were to try and anticipate the response that we would get in comments on OnePlus, it would be that OnePlus past tense did a good job of supporting devices, but the OnePlus 2 is officially off the reservation. So the OnePlus 2 will not be getting a NuGet update. And I think, again, that was just a little uncertainty to throw into that enthusiast community. Like, if I spend $500 on this phone, am I only going to get one major Android update? And it's impossible to predict. And that makes someone feel a little shaky about a purchase of that magnitude.
Yeah, especially that it's not on like a monthly plan. I think that I could be wrong here, but I think OnePlus you pay full and you can't like do monthly, right?
I don't think they have any kind of payment plan. Like, I don't think they do their own financing.
I mean, and they are cheaper than other Android phones, but the OnePlus 2, I know a lot of people still actually use it. It wasn't that long ago.
No, it really wasn't, especially in the grand scheme of, like, again, it would be coming up on end of life just in time for one last big developer push to support it so that it can go out gracefully, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. We did get replies from Renato Laporte and Ed Modlin. The iPhone 5 is apparently up to date, that it's not only on iOS 10, but you can get the iOS 11 beta for the iPhone 5S.
That's actually impressive.
That's really impressive.
Props to them.
And especially because I think the iPhone 5 is still the best looking iPhone that Apple has ever created.
Yeah.
So,
And the
there's a soft
iPhone,
spot.
yeah, the iPhone SE also looks like it, and that's a lot newer, which is obviously still supported. But hopefully we see a refresh of that soon. I don't think we will, but that'd be.
I don't think we will. I'll be curious to see. I wonder if the iPhone 7 design will become the SE.
Oh yeah,
template.
probably.
You know what I mean? Like, so like
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
get the iPhone 6 will be the sort of budget phone. The iPhone 7 will become the mid-range price point. iPhone 8 will be $1,000 plus.
Yeah, oh, the price of the
curious to
iPhone
see.
8, crazy.
It's making me nervous. We had someone else. I lost the tweet. Sorry, but someone else was asking about Galaxy Note, the Note 8, iPhone 8, $1,000 phones, and I really wonder
Crazy.
what we can expect in terms of that consumer experience, and how many people are still likely to gravitate towards a purchase that big on a mobile device. I have fears, just, it's this lifestyle durability thing, like spending $1,000 on something that's going to be in my pocket, that's going to get thrown around, that's going to get messed up, that's going to get scratched or dropped or kicked, or my daughter's going to use it as a frisbee, like
Frisbee.
I freak out about, like, what does that mean for the future of premium high-end smartphones?
Especially if Apple releases the edition and then a regular phone, as some people are kind of speculating. I think that they're going to actually lose a lot of people. Like, I don't think a lot of people are going to buy, like, the flashy, good-looking phone. I think a lot of people can't really afford to do that reasonably, because to buy a $1,000 phone and then upgrade in 2 years or 3 years even, it's a ton of money to spend. And even with the Note 8, that's going to be a ton of money. And it's going to be hard, I think, especially with the Note FE coming out. I think it's going to be hard for people to justify the Note 8 over that.
Well, I mean, the one thing Samsung has going for them there is, like, how few places have really locked in on the FE.
Yeah.
Like, enough sort of international commerce and regulators are like, it's a Note 7. That thing used to blow up. We don't want it.
I mean, I don't understand releasing that again, but whatever.
If they've got the shells for it and they can make some money on it, I mean, I get it. But for me, I really think, like, it would have just been best to kind of move on.
Yeah, let it die.
Just let it. I mean, literally, yeah, let it die, and focus on their recent successes with this new S8 form factor and what that can mean for the Note. But we've been chatting for a little while here. We're getting close to that hour mark, so I kind of want to wrap this up. But I want to use you joining the show to do a little bit of an experiment, and something that I want to play around with more. Future tech reviewers join the show, so I want to put you on the spot. Things we didn't prep you for, and rapid fire 3 main questions just to close out the show. And you got to give me your sort of, like, knee-jerk reactions there. Question number 1. What is the first app you always install on all of your smartphones?
Waze.
Question number 2. Out of all of the current phones that are currently available for consumers to purchase at the time this video was shot, if you had to spend 3 years with only that phone, what phone would it be?
I say S8. I don't know. Software support, though, is a little bit. I'll say S8.
Okay. I'll accept that. That's an acceptable answer. And question number 3: what is your favorite Italian dish?
Pasta.
I'm
Spaghetti.
sorry, it was chicken cacciatore. Oh, so close. 2 out of 3. But you're doing good. You're doing good. That's still technically a passing grade in at least the high school that I went to.
66.
Well, Jacklyn, I want to thank you for joining us. This was a fun conversation to kind of help us unpack some of the news and help us troll through our PN Weekly hashtag on Twitter, answer some of those questions from our viewers. Before we wrap this all up, your personal YouTube channel is NBT88.
YouTube.com/nothingbutTech88 with 2 T's.
Nothing but Tech88.
Yeah, so each word has its own T.
Oh, you didn't do that fancy, like, smashing together.
Yeah, I should have. I don't know. In retrospect, I should have, considering how it spells out if you, like, put it together, if you think about it. But
well, and also that would be kind of like, people would always double take on it. Nothing but tech.
Yeah, exactly. It's happened a lot. Considered
Kids
one.
with your proper grammar and spelling. In my day, we used to abbreviate everything. So they can catch you on YouTube there. They can also catch your upcoming work on Android Central. You said you're going to be spending some time doing some OnePlus 5 coverage for them. That's right.
No, for me, and then Android Central
Yeah,
is other stuff, but we're doing weekly stuff on there also.
Right on. So
and then I post like everything on my Twitter for both channels, so you can follow me on there also, I guess. Plugging right now.
Your Twitter handle is
NBT88YT. Yes, nailed it.
Got it. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us this week, and definitely keep me posted on the poll because I want to help share that too. I
okay, awesome.
Charity work, and I want people to be on the lookout for that. Folks, there you have it. This episode of the Pocketnow Weekly has come and gone. This show is over, but the conversation continues on Twitter, where you can find Jacklyn as @NBT88YT. Jules is @PointJules, and I'm humbly @SomeGadgetGuy. Pocketnow is around the web on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Google+, YouTube, and our home site, Pocketnow.com. We're basically everywhere. Now, shows like this cannot exist without your support, sharing the weekly with your friends who love mobile technology, and by dropping reviews on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and wherever else podcast reviews can be left. Once again, we want to thank this week's sponsor, Shutterstock. Definitely catch that promo code. We'll have it linked below in this video. You can save yourself 20%. They're helping us keep the lights on, but ultimately there wouldn't be a show if it weren't for our listeners and subscribers who have kept us on the air since 2012. The Pocketnow Weekly will be back next week with all kinds of delicious technology goodness. So make sure you tune back in.